But by about 1608, the Spanish are going to move their base of operations to a place that we know today as Santa Fe. Now, the governor, his name is Peralta, is going to introduce the encomienda system, and he's going to force many Pueblo families to donate food, crops, and other resources to support the building of Spanish missions. So here we're going to get into a revolt, and this revolt is known as the Pueblo Revolt. So we'll take a look at the Pueblo Revolt now. Now, the encomienda system that's going to be introduced in New Mexico is going to force Pueblo families to donate food crops and other sources to support the building of the Spanish missions, the feeding of the military forces, and the support of civil institutions. So under the repartimiento, Pueblos are going to be forced to work in Spanish households and fields. In essence, by 1608, a chartered municipality will be created that consisted of different groups, of citizens, known as vecinos, of a town council, known as a cabildo, and alcaldes ordinarios, or local magistrates. A totalitarian system under Oñate is going to be transformed into civil authority. So in 1614, Governor Peralta is going to leave to other adventures in the South, and upon his departure, a unique generation is going to arise, experiencing a bewilderment of events. So in the next 60 years, this generation is going to go through some very, very troubling times. Franciscans, especially because of their oath of poverty, are going to be very successful in establishing missions and bringing the Pueblo into the mission system. Franciscans will be looked upon with disfavor by the Spanish elite. According to the Spanish elite, they will write that the priests were insecure, they're suspicious, they're desirous of learning native traditions. Well, that's right, because the priests, if you live in an arid environment, you have to live the principles of the corporal works of mercy, because you have to feed the hungry, you have to clothe the naked, you have to give drink to the thirsty, you have to shelter the homeless. So the Franciscans, the Pueblos and the Franciscans are going to get along. They're going to get along significantly. But the elite don't like that. Alonso de Benavides, he's an agent of the Inquisition, is going to report to Mexico of antisocial acts conducted by missionized natives, and for 3 years the priests will be scrutinized severely. Now, the Apaches and the Navajos, who are outside of the region, are not going to want to be involved with the Spanish colonization effort. They will resist it. But what they will do is they will adapt the horses very quickly, and they prove to be too spirited and belligerent for a missionized lifestyle. So they either traded with the missions or the Spanish settlements, or they raided the settlements using the horses. Many missions then are also going to be built on Pueblo sacred places, sacred spaces. And then the governor that came to replace Peralta, his name was Luis de Rosas, corrupted the community so much that it split into two armed camps. So that by the 1650s and 1660s, the governors and the priests, the friars, were constantly clashing over how to run the colony that contained close to 2,500 people. Now, basically, there were 15 or so tightly woven leading families that ran the colony. So a racial casta system of privileges took hold. Intermixing occurred. So in this generation, from 1610 to 1670, mixed bloods are going to be acknowledged, yet groups maintain distinctive identities. So throughout the region, what will occur is the large ranches of cattle and sheep, known as estancias, are going to be run by a close-knit elite families. They provided the majority of the work for the colonists. So with the tremendous need for labor, A high trade in slaves occurred, especially by capturing Navajo and Apache women and children. And this led to the degradation of the community by incorporating the women and the children as slaves. One agent of trade was a Pueblo named Don Esteban Clemente. He got the title of Don from the Spanish elite because he provided the Spanish elite with a constant flow of slaves. Well, of course, the Pueblos don't like the Apaches. The Pueblos are in constant conflict with the Navajo. So in their raiding, they'll raid for women and children. Now something's going to happen in the 1660s. Drought is going to set in for 3 years. If we could bring that slide up again, the PowerPoint slide, so we can take a look at, yes, if we can bring it in, yes. So drought is going to set in for 3 years, introducing famine, introducing starvation. And the lack of water is going to prompt many Pueblos to return to their native traditions as they began to emphasize their rainmaking ceremonies as a solution. Now, because of the pressure on the priest, the regional head priest, Father Alonso de Posada, is going to seek to end a very sacred dance of the Pueblo, the Kachina dance, by destroying the Kachina masks. This led to conflict in numerous communities, and in 1675, the governor, Juan de Trevino, is going to arrest 47 Pueblo men, and he's going to charge them with sorcery because they had attempted to bring back their rain ceremonies for the desert. 4 are going to be hanged, and the rest are going to be publicly whipped in the plaza of Santa Fe. So, in response to this harsh treatment that was meted out, there's going to be a San Juan Pueblo named Popeye. And Popeye began holding secret meetings at night. And what Popeye was attempting to create was alliances amongst the different groups, especially with the traditional enemies, the Navajo and the Apache. And of course, they're all in jail together. So Popeye created an international alliance of Pueblos, of Navajos, of Apaches, of native peoples from central Mexico, of mestizos and mulattoes from central Mexico. And their demands were very simple. Respect for desert traditions. The community must respect the environmental conditions that are set in a desert, and they must respect ecologically sensitive subsistence techniques, not the extraction of surplus. So Popeye specifically aimed at the Spanish elite of the community. The plan was to eliminate the leading families. They were to deliberately kill members of the leading families, not others. That was the plan. So, when historians look at the revolt, the coalitions, in essence, formed to secure water sources for survival. Water was necessary for the community to survive. And in the region, the need for labor forces for private enterprise, the need for labor forces for mission agricultural production created a lucrative market for slaves. Basically, the harsh treatment towards slaves and those who wished to return to desert traditions led to tremendous resentment. Now, the traditional native ceremonies for rain were attacked by Spanish priests, accusing the people of pagan idolatry. So Popeye is going to lead a revolt against Spanish authority. Now, his spark towards revolt created alignments amongst the diverse ethnic populations. Those favoring a sedentary mission and private enterprise system are going to be pitted against those who understood that limited precipitation required transhuman subsistence practices. So interethnic solidarity patterns emerged in the revolt. Navajo, Apache, Pueblo, Tlaxcalan people sent north from Mexico with the mission system, mestizos, mulattoes, they're going to organize under Popeye to resist the Spanish elite. Meanwhile, it's pitted on the other side. It was a civil war. The Spanish priests, mestizos, mulattoes, and Tlaxcalan people that were allied with the Spanish, along with several Pueblo groups who had adjusted to mission life, and the Spanish elite are going to organize. Now, violence is going to ensue, and the result of the revolt was the death of a little over 400 and the banishment of about 2,000 people from the area. Now, of the 2,000 refugees, 317 were a hodgepodge of Pueblo peoples from different Pueblo regions who had already assimilated into the mission system and became Spanish-speaking workers. They will become identified, the lump sum, even though the majority were not Tiwa, they will be identified as Tiwas. Tiguas, the Spanish name for Tiwa. And because the Tiwa came from a pueblo known as Isleta, Isleta with an I is I-S-L-E-T-A. In Spanish, it's with a Y, Y-S-L-E-T-A. So the Isleta Pueblo, the Tiwas, are going to join the Spanish. The Spanish are going to be forced to end the encomienda and the departamento systems of procuring labor. The Spanish will have to formally recognize Pueblo land rights. They will be required to stop harassing them about their native religion. And the Pueblo revolt is going to force the Spanish and the missionized Pueblo allies to flee southward back towards Mexico. Let's go to a film clip and let's appreciate the San Juan Pueblo, because they finally, about 10 years ago, 12 years ago, Popeye is going to be recognized as an international human rights advocate. And in this, they will commission a Pueblo artist to build a statue of Popeye that will be put in the Senate Rotunda. Now, this is a big deal for a Native American, one of the first Native Americans that will be put in the Senate Rotunda on the basis of international human rights. So he's going to be put up there with Martin Luther King and with Abraham Lincoln. So Popeye is very important. But we're going to go to a homemade film clip from the San Juan Pueblo as they appreciate the honor of and how Popeye is honored. So let's go to that film clip.
Go to the rivers and cleanse yourself of the recent past. Lastly, don't forget, each morning before our Father the Sun makes his appearance, take feather in one hand and cornpole in the other, and offer them to the deities in the mountains, in the clouds, in the valleys, to the north, to the west, to the south, to the east, to Sipopini and Wenyama, Sangi de Ho.
You didn't know who Popeye is.
The Pueblo kids don't get this part of the history in their school.
They say he was a spiritual leader, meaning a medicine man.
Only us, the older people, I guess, knew about what this was all about.
What we learned about ourselves from history books, it's appalling.
The children at that school could not find anything to read about Indians that was not against the Indians. There was hardly anything that was positive.
We have been part of this country, the building of this country, and yet we haven't been recognized as such.
The statue is now, in a place where people from all over the world and walks of life will be able to see and know that that person, the Pope was a part of our history and will continue to educate people for years to come.
It's a very beautiful story of the triumph of ultimately the human spirit.
Our story will have a place in American history and the history of the world.
May the 21st was the unveiling of Pope A here.
Gilwingate decided we will host the event of the blessing. It will be the unveiling of the statue for the Pueblo people.
Glad that all our Pueblo people came together as one.
I never thought in my life that I would be a significant part of history.
We're honoring a man, in his home community.
Being selected is a great honor because I have that honor to represent the Pueblo people through carving the image of Pope A.
The legacy of Pope includes working together because we are not isolated as we once were. We must live together. The problems we share in this country are not shared by just one people. They are shared by all.
We, the children, the descendants of all those who have gone before us, stand here today to celebrate and present the statue of Pope A to the state and its citizens, as sculpted by famous Pueblo artist Clifford Frower, and embrace the spirit and beauty of diversity and humanity.
There's that joy just in the mere fact of dancing and praying for the world.
Growing up, I learned that when you dance, you just don't think about yourself. You do it not only for yourself, but you do it for the people out there and everybody in the whole world. You do it for the betterness of the people.
It was a very great feeling to see this young individuals dancing with their heart.
When we honor this animal, like I said, we show appreciation, we show respect.
We wanted to signify that everybody's prayers of hope, of healing, of thankfulness, appreciation and gratitude towards Pope and then the Eagles had carried that back to the spirit world.
You had to have been there to feel that energy, the emergence of some kind of energy, and people felt it. I felt it. And people have described that as that this is a true blessing from the Great Spirit. And that was a significant event for the entirety of the Pueblo nations.
For the ceremony at the Capitol building, we all met over at the National Museum of the American Indian so that we can all proceed to the Capitol building.
I could hear whispers and people looking in the sky.
Everybody looked up and there was a bald eagle flying high up in the sky. Washington, D.C., you don't see very many eagles.
Having that eagle appear, right moments before this ceremony, to me it was very powerful.
When the eagle passed by, it was like a sign that shows that Pope was watching over us or listening to us.
Okay, so that was a tribute to Popeye. And again, the reason why he's in the Senate Rotunda is because of the international human rights record that he left as a result of the idea of resistance, to resist, to survive. Now, the Spanish, Ken, as I shared with you, are going to be forced to end the encomienda and repartimiento systems of procuring labor. And they had to formally recognize the Pueblo's land rights. And they're going to be required to stop harassing them about their native religion. And they will negotiate terms by which to go back. But in the meanwhile, they're going to be forcing the Spanish and the missionized Pueblo allies to flee southward back towards Mexico. And in the process, as they move back, the Piros, the Tompiros, the Seneca, and the Tanos that were living along the riverbank south of where the revolt occurred are going to accommodate these refugees. And eventually they're going to help them construct two missions. Construct a pueblo, construct a presidio. And these communities will be eventually identified as El Paso del Norte. Now, in present-day Juarez, Mexico, in present-day Juarez, Mexico, there is a Pueblo group that's identified as Senecu. That will be established in Juarez, Mexico. In present-day El Paso, Texas, there is the Isleta Mission, spelled Y for Spanish instead of I in Tiwa. And the Isleta Mission is going to be constructed by Tiguas, Piros, Tompiros, Seneca, and Tanos. So there's two Native American communities that are going to be part of the Pueblo tradition that's going to come down to eventually become part of the El Paso Juarez area. And that is the Seneca, so you'll find the Pueblo tradition in Juarez today, and then here in the Isleta Mission, which is the Pueblo tradition in the mission of Isleta. Now, in present-day Socorro, another mission is going to be constructed by the Piros and the Tanos, who are traditional Pueblo peoples from the region. Now, many mestizos will form the basis for the Socorro mission today as they intermarried with the Piros and the Tanos, as well as with the Tigua. Now, there's a presidio known as Presidio del Paso del Norte, which will be built in present-day Juarez in a place that's called Porvenir. It will eventually be relocated south of the Socorro mission, and it will be called El Presidio de San Elisario. Now, eventually, it will be pronounced Elisario. So that is San Elisario today. That is where they like to hold the first Thanksgiving. This Presidio will become an important trading center, and eventually a hacienda will be built to handle the trade that will connect the north to the south, and everything will come through what is known as El Paso del Norte. And that hacienda will be known as Nuestra Señora de la Soledad de los Tiburcios. And so, hence comes the creation of what is known as the El Paso community today. And as I shared with you, the El Paso City Council will become educated, and they realize that what they need to do is appreciate the native traditions. So hopefully you come to understand something about the move north. One of the reasons why the Spanish are moving north is to find wealth, but also to, in the evangelical seal, bring Christ to quote-unquote pagan idolaters. But in this process, it's going to be transforming native peoples into Spanish-speaking workers through the mission system, is going to be eventually creating the ethnic cultural patterns that will eventually emerge throughout the Southwest, because similar events are going to occur. The Pueblo Revolt is going to send everybody back and say, wait a minute, you need to rethink these experiences, and what will result for Chicano history is this hybridization of cultures, is this miscegenation of peoples, is the creation of unique cultural experiences, all surrounding the significance of water. Water is the key to survival. And so, hence ends the presentation on the move north and the first colony and the Pueblo Revolt.